Hello and welcome back to Tomcat Stitchery. I'm Whitney and today we are doing the Cashmerette Wexford top and dress sew along. So the Wexford is a knit swing style top, meaning it's fitted through the bust, through the shoulders and bust area, and then swings out from there. It's got a few different sleeve lengths, a short sleeve, a kind of a 3/4 length sleeve, and a full length sleeve. This is a fitted sleeve, as well as a top version or long dress version. You can also make this pattern sleeveless with sleeve bands. There are two different pattern pieces for those bodices, depending on whether or not you would like to do sleeveless or sleeved, but you've got many options that are included with this pattern. This is a knit top, like I mentioned, that is meant for light to medium weight knits, such as cotton spandex, rayon spandex, viscose spandex, any kind of a polyester blend, ITY. Any of those will work for this pattern. You want at least 30% stretch in your fabric, so you do want to make sure you've got that at a minimum. This pattern is a beginner, classified as a beginner pattern, so any of you can conquer this knit top. I will be sewing the entire thing on my sewing machine, on my Bernina 790 Pro, which is a loaner machine to me from the University of Sewing, but this entire project can be done on this machine. I will be using a Schmetz stretch needle, a size 9 for my fabric, and I'm also using a somewhat new to the market stretch thread. I have using the Mettler Seriflex. However, there are many different stretch threads that come in all of the major thread brands, so just pick your favorite. This is just kind of nice. It can be used in the top thread as well as the bobbin. Just gives your knit projects a little more give when it comes to those stitches that we're using here on the sewing machine. However, you're welcome to use all-purpose thread as well. Also optional are clear elastic or a iron-in woven stay tape. I'll be showing how to use both in this sew along. I would also suggest a walking foot for your sewing machine. If yours did not come with a walking foot, these can be purchased generically for any machine out there. It really helps when you are working with knit fabrics. Other than that, you may also want a twin needle for the hemming. Any of this can also be done on the serger as well as with the cover stitch machine, although again, I am showing you how to do all these steps on a sewing machine. Just know that you can also make this entire top on your serger and cover stitch if that is what your preference is. For this sew along, I'm not only showing you how to do the sleeveless dress version, but also the long sleeved top version. I am using a viscose spandex knit for both of my versions. So that is the fabric that I have chosen to use. I find that a swing top goes beautifully with fabric that drapes beautifully, and rayon or viscose spandex certainly does that. If you would like to get your hands on the Wexford, this is one of the Cashmerette Club patterns. You will need to have the all access tier of their club in order to access this pattern. I have been paying for this all access tier with my own money since almost the inception of Cashmerette Club. I find it well worth its money. All the different patterns that come out each month, plus the supplementary lives and the different classes and the discount codes. There's just a lot of really great value for their club, their all access club tier. But you will need that all access club tier in order to access the Wexford. All right, without further ado, let's head over to the cutting table and take a look at our pattern pieces and our supplies. All right, let's go over the pattern pieces that we need as well as some of our other notions that we're going to need to make our Wexford. So there are two options in this pattern, a view A and a view B, and the main difference there is that view A is a sleeved bodice, so a sleeved front and a sleeved back, and view B is a sleeveless front and a sleeveless back. You can make either with any of the lengths, whether that is the top length or the dress length. And then obviously if you're using the sleeved bodice with the sleeve, you can make those a few different sleeve lengths as well. So I will be doing view A as it is portrayed as a top and view B as it's portrayed as a dress. But again, you can make view A as a dress and view B as a top. Okay, let's get going. So for view A, we need one of piece one, which is the front. And it'll be a 1, A, B, or C. I'm using the GH cup here, so I've got piece 1C. Cutting one of these on the fold. Make sure you mark all of your notches. I do clip in to center front here into that fold line. It just makes it easier when we're putting the neckband on later to have that center front marked. So we're going to need one of those on the fold. We're going to need one of piece 2. Oops. Rolling my next piece here. One of piece 2 also cut on the fold. This is the sleeved back. One was our sleeved front. Piece 2 is our sleeved back. We need one of these cut on the fold. And again, I have marked into center back with just a little notch so that I know where center back is located when we're putting that neckband in. And then mark all of your other notches as well. I'm using a rayon spandex fabric that likes to be very curly. All right, we need one of piece 5, which is our neckband. So we need to cut one of those. Again, mark or trim or clip into all of your notch marks. And then we need 2 of piece 6, which is our sleeve. And you can cut, you can do the mid sleeve, you can do the short sleeve up here. I'll be doing the long sleeve just because that just shows you all of the options here. And you need 2 of these for the sleeves. All right, for view B, wait here, let's talk about notions real quick. Notions, well, we'll talk about notions at the end because it's the same notions no matter which view you're doing here. All right, for view B, we are going to need one. This is the sleeveless bodice. So we need one of piece C or 3 A, B, or C. Again, I'm doing the GH cup, so I need piece or 3C. But we need one of these cut on the fold. And again, I have marked center front here as well with a little bit of a notch. But this is the sleeveless view, so you can do any of the lengths you want. But that is one of those on the fold. Then we need one of piece 4. Ooh, just pulling all my pieces here. One of piece 4, which is our sleeveless back. We need one of these cut on the fold. And again, I trim into my center back. It's going to make putting that neckband on a lot easier. So there is that. And then, I need of piece 5, which again is our neckband. Just like with view A, we need one of these. Cut piece 5, mark all of those notches, and then we need 2. We're cutting 2 of piece 7, which is our armband for view B. And we want to make sure that we are cutting these, follow your grain line. So this wants to be parallel with our selvage so that our greatest amount of stretch is going the length of this, because we are going to be stretching both the neckbands for view A and B, and then also our armbands to fit into the openings. So 2 of those. All right, other things that we need. Optional is clear elastic. So clear elastic, we're going to be using this to stabilize a 1/4 inch wide clear elastic to stabilize our shoulder seams. I'm going to show you how to do this. It is optional, but I am going to show you how to do it when we get into the sewing part. If you don't want to use clear elastic though, another thing that works just as well is woven stay tape. This is the Sokeezy brand. It's a 1/2 inch wide. I'll show you how to apply this into the shoulder seams if you want to go this route. You don't have to use this brand. This is just what I use, but I will show you both ways so you can kind of see, make your decision. And that's going to be stabilizing the shoulder seams, especially if you're using a fabric such as a rayon or a viscose spandex, or even some of the poly spandexes that are just a little bit heavier and very stretchy. Those shoulder seams can grow really quickly. So having those shoulder seams stabilized, especially for the version with the sleeve, but both, it's a good idea, really helps the garment keep its shape. Also optional is a twin needle. I'll be using a regular stretch needle for all of my sewing, and I'm using a size 9 Schmetz stretch needle for all of the seams, but there is an option, this again is optional, to use a twin needle to finish off your hems. We're also doing some sewing down of the neckband around the neck, and then also the armholes around for the sleeveless view. And then obviously your sleeve hems, and then the hem of the actual dress and or top. It's optional to use the twin needle. I will show you how to do that, and I will also show you how to finish that off with a zigzag stitch if you don't want to use a twin needle and you just want to use your regular old needle. We'll be sewing these all on the sewing machine. You can sew these completely up on a serger if you want. I'm just showing you how to do all of this on your regular sewing machine, and you could also use a cover stitch machine to finish off those, to do any of the top stitching as well. I will not be demonstrating that in this class, but that is an option if you do have access to a cover stitch machine. The final thing that is not included in the pattern but that I find very helpful is this double-sided fusible stay tape. It's 1 inch wide. It is a double stick, hence the double-sided. I put this on my hems, so I will iron this onto the hem of my sleeve as well as the hem at the bottom of my dress and top. It makes hemming so much easier. It presses everything up real nicely. This does wash out, but it presses everything up real nicely, and then makes for a really kind of stabilizes the hem area as well, whether you're using the twin needle or zigzag or cover stitch. So that is everything that we need. Let's head over to the pressing station to get started with our actual sewing of our top and dress. Another thing, I am using the Mettler thread, their Seraflex thread, which is a regular thread, but it's got a little bit of stretch to it, which is perfect for using with knits. You can use regular all-purpose thread if you would like, but I am using the Seraflex thread. It just gives a little bit more give when you are working with knit fabrics that I find really helpful. All right, let's get started sewing. Okay, before we start sewing, I'm going to put my fusible tapes where they need to be. So we are going to go ahead, and I've set my scissors somewhere that there they are. Okay, we're going to go ahead and apply these. Now, if you're using the clear elastic on the backs, you don't need to do this woven stay tape step. If you are making this entirely on your serger, which is an option, you can make it on your sewing machine or your serger. I would absolutely recommend this method if you were using a serger. Dealing with the clear elastic on the serger can be a bit of a nightmare. So this is on the back piece, whether this is piece 4, which is the sleeveless back, or piece 2, which is the sleeved back, either or. We need to put a little bit of stay tape there on those back, just the back, not on the front. So I'm just going to cut a little piece on my View A version that I'm making. I will show you how to do the clear elastic. And then we just press it. You want to make sure you've got glue side down, but this is going to keep that seam allowance from stretching, whether you're adding just the armbands or if you're adding your sleeve. Does the same thing as the clear elastic. Okay? The other thing that we need to do that I just highly recommend, because it just makes life so much easier when we get to that point, is adding this double-sided fusible stay tape. You can use other stuff. You can use Wonder Tape, you know, anything, any of that double stick tape that they sell. You can use any of those. But we want to put those on the hems of our dress and or top, as well as the hems of our sleeves. So because the hems on this top and dress is so wide, I'll show you how to do it on the sleeve. But we do this the same way across all the hems. So again, if you're doing the sleeveless view, you're not going to have a sleeve, and this also, you know, whatever sleeve length you're doing, you're going to have a different hem. This is the long sleeved, but basically what we are doing is we are taking our double-sided, again, this is the double-sided fusible stay tape. I will link this in the description box below if you're curious about this brand. and we are going to be, it's got paper on one side, glue on the other, and we're going to be gluing this in place. Now, I want to keep this out of the seam allowances a good ways, because there's nothing more annoying than trying to pick this tape out of sewn seam allowances. And I mean, our seam allowance is a 3/8 of an inch. This is more than 3/8 of an inch that I would rather err on the side of too much out of the way. It'll still get glued up the same. Okay, so we're gonna iron that on. Leave the paper on for now. We'll peel that off later, but go ahead and iron this to your hems of your top and or dress before we've sewn anything together, and then the hems of your sleeves if you are putting sleeve, if you're using the sleeved option. So go ahead and do that, and then I'll meet you back here and we're gonna start sewing. All right, now it is time to start sewing. So we need, if you are making a sleeved version, so a version with actual sleeves, we are going to need piece 1, A, B, or C, and piece 2. So piece 1, A, B, or C is our front sleeved. Piece 2 is our back sleeved. So this is if we are doing view A, which is the sleeved view. And we are, our shoulder seams get sewn the same way, but for either view, but those are the pieces we need if we're doing the sleeved view. And we're going to be putting these, this is the back, we're going to put that up, and we're putting this right sides together. The view A, I'm going to show you how to do the clear elastic. So there's nothing on the shoulder seams here. And we're just going to put those shoulder seams together, right sides together, and I'm putting a couple of clips. Just like so. If you are doing view B, which is the sleeveless bodice, we need pieces 3. Sorry, my paper is really, pieces 3, A, B, or C, which is our front for our sleeveless. And we need piece 4, which is our back sleeveless. And remember, on this view B, I put on the back, I ironed on my woven stay tape. So we're doing both here. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to put this right side up, and then we're going to put our front, which is piece 3, right side down. And I'm going to clip those shoulder seams together. Just like so. Now let's go to the sewing machine and we're going to sew these shoulder seams. All right, so we're going to do our shoulder seams, and if you've already put your stay tape onto the back edge, you're just sewing your seam allowances. That's all we're doing. But I'm going to show you how to do it if you're going to use the clear elastic. So let's get going on that. So we've got, and again, this is the same for view A or view B. You're just sewing on different pieces depending on which one you're using. The instructions have you just, like, if you're using clear elastic, doing it all in one pass, but I just think it's easier to do it in 2. So, and then you don't have things creeping around on you. So we're going to do this in 2 passes. And I think, yeah, I think it's easier. So number 1, we are going to be using a stretch stitch. So I am using a zigzag stitch that is set at a 2.5 length and a 0.5 width. To give it that little bit of extra stretch. Again, I am using a stretch thread, which is, I'm using the Ceraflex, which is the Mettler stretch thread. Other brands have stretch thread as well. Not elastic thread, stretch thread. And that is in my top needle as well as my bobbin. So I use it just like regular all-purpose. But you can have success with regular all-purpose as well. All right, so we are sewing at a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. I have got a walking foot on my machine. If you are new to sewing with knits, you need a walking foot for your machine. It's going to make sewing with knits so much easier. Every machine, there is a generic walking foot out there for any machine. So definitely worth the investment to buy that extra foot. It's going to make your life so much easier. All right, let's sew at our 3/8 of an inch seam allowance with that narrow zigzag. Because I'm using very drapey fabric here, and it's not getting sucked in to my machine, like it's feeding through well. However, if you are having issues with your fabric, which does happen, getting sucked down into your machine when you start, if you just hold your top thread and your bobbin thread back here as you get started, that won't happen. So just a little word to the wise there. All right. So once we have sewn that seam, we can now put our clear elastic into that seam. And we want to put it onto the back, which this is the back piece, right? Yes, this is the back. So we want to be sewing this onto the back. And I am just centering it over that line of stitching that I just made. And now I'm going to sew that same line of stitching again at 3/8. I'm not stretching this at all. I am, it's just like a one-to-one. But I'm centering that over that previous stitch line. Again, you can do this in one pass if you want. I just find this to be a little bit easier. All right, and then another thing, as the instructions say, you can, so there we go. It's there. You can hardly see it because it's clear, but it's centered over that seam line now. But it's just going to give some stability to that shoulder seam. We'll do it to the same shoulder seam as well. However, if you're using a knit fabric, a lot of times it does not fray. You do not need to finish your seam allowances. You can use a serger. However, if you're using a serger, you don't need to use the sewing machine. If you're using a 4-thread serger stitch, you can sew all these seams just with the serger, and it'll finish off those seam allowances as well as sew your seams at the same time. Completely up to you, but obviously I'm showing you how to do this on a sewing machine. So some options with our sewing machine are to, number one, just leave it as is, or we can use a regular zigzag stitch, or there's also some machines have faux overlock stitches that you could use as well. But we can go to a wider stitch. So instead of the 0.5, if we want to go to maybe like a 3, maybe if I can get there. There we go. And we're just going to sew that close to the cut edge here. You can make it a little denser if you want. And then you can, maybe trim off that little bit of excess there, or you can also have it going off the edge if you want that look as well. So those are just some options for finishing off those seam allowances. I'm going to leave mine raw though, because my fabric doesn't fray, so there's no need in finishing them. Just kind of up to you on how you want the inside of your garment to look. All right, go ahead and sew your other shoulder seam, and then I'll meet you back at the pressing table. All right, so once we've got those shoulder seams sewn and finished off however you would like, we are going to open it up, and we're going to press our seam allowances, and this is for all views, towards the back. So that elastic will be covered up by that seam allowance, and you will never see it. All right. So there we go. Go ahead and press your seam allowances, and then we'll come back here to do our neckband. Okay, so I've set the bodice aside for right now because we're going to be working on the neckband for just a minute before we sew it to it. This is for all views. This is the same for either view that you are doing, but you're going to need piece 5, which is your neckband, which we've got here. And we're just going to take this, and we've got little notches here at the short ends. We're going to put it right sides together. Put a couple clips in here. And we're going to sew this little bitty seam at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. And then I'll meet you right back here. All right, once we have sewn that short edge, the instructions tell us to trim that to about 1/4 of an inch, just to reduce some of that bulk. And now we are going to do some pressing. We are first going to press that seam allowance that we just sewed open, like so. And now we are going to take our this piece and we're going to fold it wrong sides together. And I'm going to just pop a clip in right there at that seam. I'm using a tailor's ham here. It just kind of helps when you're pressing anything on the fold. But a rolled up towel or something, or a rolled up newspaper with a towel around it works just as well. And then I'm matching my notches that are here. These are the shoulder notches. And I'm just going to press that in place as I go. And then I marked, or there's a notch there at the center that'll be center front. So match those up. Clip. Give a good press. And then the other set of shoulder notches. All right. At this point, and I would recommend this especially if you're using jersey that's really curling on you, you can go and at 1/4 of an inch baste these 2 layers together if you want. Just use that zigzag stitch, that 2.5 length, 0.5 width zigzag stitch if you would like, to keep things nice and in order, but you don't have to. My jersey is actually being very obedient, so I'm not going to need to do that. All right, now we're going to need that bodice that we've sewn together at the shoulders. And we're going to sew our neckband in. So I'm going to take this and right side together. I am matching up. So I'm going to kind of put my neckband over this with the right side of my shirt up. Where's my seam? Okay, so my center back seam that's here, I'm going to match that up with center back here, the back neck, and pop that in. Now our neckband is actually smaller than our neck opening, and we are going to be stretching it a little bit as we sew. Next, I am matching up 1 notch with my shoulder seam, and I want to make sure that that shoulder seam is going towards the back. And then on around to the front here, matching that center front notch with center front. That little clip that I put into center front and center back are really helpful here. Oops, sorry. And then over here, matching this notch with this other shoulder seam. Again, making sure that that seam allowance is going towards the back. And just making sure, so as you can tell, my neckband is shorter than the neckline, and that's okay. That's what it's supposed to do. But making sure that my neckband isn't twisted. And I think we are all good. All right. And I'm just putting the 4 pins in. So let's go over to the sewing machine and we are going to sew this in. Okay, so we're going to sew our neckband in. I'm going to sew with the neckband against the feed dogs and the neckline up. And again, we've got more neckline than we do neckband. And I'm matching all of my raw edges here together. We're sewing this at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. And I'm using that little zigzag stitch. I'm just going to get this started. And then I'm going to pull my raw edges together. And I am stretching the neckband, which is underneath, as I go. And we want to make sure that that seam allowance stays pressed towards the back. And we're just going from pin to pin. We want to back stitch at the beginning and ending of our stitch line. Okay, so we've got the neckband in. You can finish off that seam allowance if you want. Like I mentioned, I'm not doing that here for this version. But now we can go and you can go and press your seam allowance towards, you're pressing it down. So you're pressing your seam allowance down towards the body of the shirt and or dress. But let's do that. Go ahead and do that. And then we're going to come back here and we're going to top stitch this down in place. All right, once you've pressed that seam allowance down towards the body, we are going to top stitch this in place. Now, you can use a twin needle, you can use a small zigzag stitch, which is what I'm going to do here, or you can use a cover stitch machine. I will be showing you how to use the twin needle. I'll do that on when we get to our hems. But you can use that same technique if you would like. If you want to skip ahead and watch that, you can use that same technique for this area. But we are basically going to be sewing, well, just top stitching. So I'm going to be sewing, I don't know, like an eighth-ish of an inch from the fold, or from the seam here, making sure that that seam allowance is pointing down towards the body. So you may have to stretch things a little. And again, I'm using the same stitch that I used to sew this in. So it's that 2.5 length, 0.5 width. But if you want to use something decorative or something a wider zigzag, you can definitely do that. And I am stretching this a little bit as I sew because that neckband had to be stretched to be sewn into the neckline. All right, let's go give this one more press real quick. All right, so we can just give this one last press, that seam allowance down. If it is curling up on you a little bit like this one is here, you can trim that a little closer to that top stitched edge, just so it lays, you know, a little bit better. Completely up to you if you want to do that. All right, our neckbands are in. Now it is time to move on to view A for the sleeves. Okay, for the sleeves, you need your bodice that you have your neckband in, and you're going to need your piece 6, which is your sleeve pattern, whichever length you are making here, and you will have 2 of those. And if you recall, I have put that double stick hem tape onto those hems just to make it a little bit easier when we get to that point, but I still have the paper on there. All right, we're going to open up one side of our topper dress. But this is the sleeved version. And I have got 2 notches here on the arm's eye for the back. I've got my shoulder seam that should be pressed towards the back, and then 1 notch here on the front. And we want to match that with our sleeve, which is this one. So we've got our arm's eye is obviously curving this way. And our sleeve, we are putting it right side down, and it is curving the opposite way, but that's okay. Just make sure you've got the correct sleeve on the correct side of the body here. So my double notches here will match up to the double notches here. So we're going to place a pin or clip here at the shoulder seam. That top notch on the sleeve gets matched to the shoulder seam there. And then I'm going to pull this over this way to match these double notches here on the back. And then our raw edges here on the edge. And then on the front, matching that single notch, and then the raw edge. All right, let's now go over to the sewing machine and sew that seam. Okay, so we're going to sew this with the little zigzag stitch we've been using, and I'm sewing with my the body of my shirt and or dress up, and the sleeve against the feed dogs, not the sleeve dogs. And I am putting this at my 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. And we're just going to go slowly because we've got a lot of our raw edges. You could put more clips and stuff in here if you are more comfortable doing that. But I'm just going to go slowly, matching my raw edges up as we go. And you may have to do a slight bit of pulling on the bodice so that it fits that sleeve cap nice. And that's okay. We do want to make sure, though, when we come around to our shoulder seam, that is going towards the back. All right, back stitching at the beginning and ending of that seam. Now, you can finish off your seam allowance if you want. Again, I'm not because I don't need to. But go ahead and do your second sleeve and then press those seam allowances towards the sleeve. And I'll meet you back here. All right, now that we've got our sleeves in, we're gonna have what's gonna look like a shirt and or dress here in just a second with sleeves. So we're gonna do our side seams next. So I am just matching up here, right sides together, starting on one side of the bodice here. Matching up my underarm seams, and again, we press those towards the sleeve, so those should be going towards the sleeve. And then we can pop a pin or a clip here at our hem of our sleeve. And then we'll put another one here in the middle. And then we will match up our hem. And whether you're making the top version or the dress version, there's a whole bunch of notches, obviously more notches for the dress version than for the top version, but notches to match up. So you want to make sure that those are matched, especially the one at the bust, which is right here. All right. Pin your second side seam as well. And then let's go back to the machine, and we're going to sew this by starting at the hem of the shirt or the dress, sewing all the way up to the arm, pivoting, and then sewing down the arm to the hem of the sleeve. So let's go do that. Again, I'm starting at the hem of the shirt in this case, but it would be the same for the dress. With that narrow zigzag stitch, we're just sewing at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Get to the underarm seam, and we'll kind of pivot, and then go down the sleeve. All right, just like so. So go ahead and do that to the second side, and then I'll meet you back at the pressing station. Okay, once we've got our side seams, I've got some threads I need to trim. Our side seams all nice and sewn up. We've basically got a shirt and or dress. Like if we were, looking at it, it looks like a shirt or dress. Just needs hems, which is true. But before we do that, I'm going to this is a seam roll. It's just real handy to have to stick in here, and we're going to press our seam allowances on both sides towards the back. Okay, I'm not pushing this all the way through the end of the hem because I don't want to pop my paper yet. All right, so we're going to do that to the other side, and then we'll be ready for hems on view A. But let's go to view B first and get it to the same step. All right, for view B, we have got our neckline, all done and sewn, and our side seams and everything are still open. So this next step we're going to do is we're going to do the side seams on our view B, which is our sleeveless view. So I'm going to put this wrong side out because I want our right sides of our fabric together. Sorry, this is the dress view for me, and there's a lot of fabric. All right, so here's my side seam. We've got it right sides together. I'm starting at the underarm, and I'm just popping a clip here. And then I am going to match my notches. There are a few of them. Okay, now I'm just going to go over to the sewing machine, and I am going to start at the hem of the dress or top and sew all the way up to the underarm seam at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance with that 2.5 length, 0.5 width zigzag stitch. And I'm going to do that on both sides, and then I'll meet you back here. All right, once you have both your side seams sewn, you can go in and press these seam allowances towards the back. Okay, now it is time for us to construct our armbands for view B. So I'm going to set this aside for a minute. And we need our 2 armbands, which is piece 7. We cut 2 of those. Guys, this gets put together pretty much the same way that our neckband got put together. We're just sewing it into the armholes instead of the neck line. But yeah, let's go ahead and do one of these together. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we are going to, just like with our neckband, sew our short ends right side together. So I'm going to go to the sewing machine, and I'm going to sew these seams with my narrow zigzag at 3/8 of an inch. All right, once our band has been sewn, those short ends, we're just going to pull it over here and press that seam allowance open. And then just like with our neckband, we're going to fold this wrong sides together very carefully. And give that a press. And just like with the neckband, if you've got jersey that is being very, very curly, you can go ahead and baste those 2 layers together if you want. All right, now we're going to do something called quartering. We're going to quarter our armhole and quarter our armband to get it put in really easily. We didn't have to do this on the neckband because there were some notches. So I've got my seam is right here at the back, and I'm just folding this in half with the seam at one end, and then I'm going to pop a pin here at this other end. And then I'm going to match that pin with the seam. And now I'm going to put a pin on either end here. And now we've effectively quartered this armband. And I'm just going to set it aside for just a second because now we're going to do the same with the actual armhole. So here we've got our armhole of our dress right here. I'm going to take my side seam and my shoulder seam and match those up together and then pull this taut this way. Put a pin in there. Then And pull the other. And now sometimes you may want to, at this point, match up your pins to make sure that your side seam and your shoulder seam are the halfway points as well, which they are on this pattern. Sometimes that's not the case. It depends on how finicky you want to get there. All right, so now we have quartered our armhole. So now we can pin our band in place on our armhole. So I am going to match up, right side together here, my seam of the armband to the side seam of the dress. And then I'm just going to kind of go around and match my pins. Our armband is going to be smaller than our armhole. We'll be stretching the armband to fit the armhole. Then I'll match this pin here to the shoulder seam. And then we'll match these pins. All right, so now let's go to the sewing machine and we're going to sew these in place. All right, so I'm going to sew with my band against the feed dogs and my armhole up. And we're sewing that at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. And I'm just going to go from pin to pin and I'm going to stretch that armband so that it fits the armhole as we go, making sure all those raw edges match up nice and neat. Making sure that my seam allowances on the shoulder seam and on the side seam are going the direction that they're meant to go, so press towards the back. All right, so there we go. We've got our armband, now sewn to the armhole. So go ahead and press that towards the body and then do the other side and I'll meet you back here for the top stitching. All right, so just like with our neckband, once we have pressed everything towards the body of the, where are we here? Once we've pressed everything towards the body of the garment, we can top stitch. So I am again going to use this little zigzag stitch, but you can use the twin needle, you can use a cover stitch, you can use a wider zigzag stitch, whatever your preference. But we're just sewing, top stitching that seam allowance towards the body. All right, trim your threads and let's go take a look above. All right, and just like with the neckband, if you wanted to trim those seam allowances close to that top stitching line, you absolutely can do that. But now we've got our armbands in, so the last step now is hemming. So yeah, grab your top and let's get to hemming. All right, so the final thing that we have to do, guys, now are hems. So this is for both views, whether you are, it doesn't matter if you're hemming a shirt, if you're hemming the dress, if you are hemming a sleeveless view or a sleeve view. We're doing the hem at the bottom of the garment. And if you recall, I went ahead and put some double-sided hem tape up here. If you've not done this, you can do it at this time. It is just a little bit more difficult. It was easier to put the first pass in when it's flat, but you can still do it at this point if you want, whether you're using Wonder Tape, whatever the case may be. So what I like to do is start at one of the side seams here, and I'm going to peel my paper, and I'm going to peel my paper from this side as well, just a little bit though, so that we can start at that side seam. And we are hemming at 1 inch. So we're supposed to fold up 1 inch per the pattern, which is another reason I love this stuff. It's a 1 inch wide hem tape. So I am literally just folding this over at the edge of that glue. And I'm starting at the side seam. I'm not trying not to press too much over here, but if I get a little bit, it's okay. And now I'm just going to go around the hem of my shirt and very carefully hemming this in place. Now, this is a curved hem, so it's not going to press like perfectly up in to that area. It's okay if you get just a little bit of gathering. It will be flat on the outside where you can see. Making sure that my seam allowances are going the way that I want them to when I get to those intersections. All right, now that glue has adhered to the bottom of the hem. Okay, so now we are going to take this over to the sewing machine, and we're going to hem it in place. And again, we can hem with the narrow zigzag that we've been sewing with. Like, that's totally fine. We can hem with a larger zigzag. We can hem with a cover stitch. But I'm going to show you how to use a twin needle to get a really neat finish with the hem. All right, so before we get started, I'm going to show you the setup here. So I have got 2 spools of thread, both of my black thread threaded. A lot of times, a lot of machines will have 2 spots. This is my normal spot that I put my thread when I am threading my machine. This is an extra one that pops up. So your machine may have, mine just folds up, but your machine may have like a little extra one that there's like a hole where you can stick the spool into the hole, and then you've got a spot for your spool. So just things to keep in mind. Also, I've seen people that have taken a bobbin with the same thread and put it in front of the thread on the regular spool here, if there's room. So there's some options, but you do need 2 spools of thread or 2 different sources of thread. So I have threaded this one underneath this little part here, which I'm supposed to do for this machine. And then I've got my regular one threaded per normal. Once I pull my thread out, I am putting those 2 pieces of thread, holding them as one. And then I am threading them through my machine as one thread. And then when I get down here, this is my double needle, my twin needle, and it's got a single shank here in the middle. So it goes in just like a regular needle. And I'm threading one thread through one needle and one thread through the other. You can't use your automatic threader here. You've got to just use your eyeballs. It can be a little difficult. And that's all. That's all we need to do. Right, the bobbin thread in there is just fine. The way this works is we're going to be sewing with a straight stitch. I am taking my straight stitch to a 4.0 millimeter, actually 3. This is thin fabric. I'm going to do a 3. A 3 millimeter straight stitch. And my machine has a spot where I can show that I am using a double needle. If you don't have this on your machine, that's fine. It will work just fine. But basically, it's sewing 2 straight stitches on the right side, and then the bobbin zigzags between them on the wrong side. So that's what gives us the stretch we need. Okay? All right. Let me put you back on the tripod, and we'll get to sewing. All right, I do want to note that I still have my walking foot on. You just need to make sure that your walking foot has enough room for, which it probably does. If you were using a zigzag, you've probably got enough room for that. But you want to make sure that the twin needle that you grabbed does fit, so you're not hitting anything through there. All right, and we are sewing at a 1 inch hem allowance, and I'm sewing with the right side up. All right, so I'm going to be sewing. I'm holding on to my thread tails here on the back before I get going, just to make sure that nothing is everything wants to start the way it wants to go. And then once we're started, I can let go. And now we are just sewing along our hem all the way around. get around to the front, I'm going to trim my threads. And so over that line of stitching about 1 inch, then back stitch. And there we have got the twin needle situation, and it does this zigzag on the back, which gives it its give. Okay, let's go back to the pressing station. All right, so if you were making view B, you are now finished. You have sewn your twin or your double needle hem. You can give it another little press if you want. Not really necessary because of that glue we've got there, but everything should be nice and neat there on the front and the back. And again, that double stick tape also acts as kind of a stabilizer so you don't get the tunneling in there. If you are getting tunneling between your twin needle, you may need to play around with the tension on your machine. All right, if you are doing view A, now we need to tackle our sleeve hems, which get done very, shocker, very similarly. I'm just going to take all of the paper off of my hem here. And then making sure that my seam allowance is going the direction I want it. I'm gonna fold this up. Now, if I were doing the short sleeved hem, I would do it the same way that I just did the hem on the body of the shirt. But with these narrower ends of the sleeves here, I'm folding it up, making sure that it's at 1 inch all the way around. And again, that glue really gives me a good idea of where that is. And I'm just gonna press here in the middle. I'm not pressing my ends, just right here in the middle. And then I will pull it the other way. So that should be nice and good and pressed all the way around. All right, now we are gonna go back to the machine and sew this with that twin needle again. All right, so I've got my sleeve inside out. This is really helpful for these smaller areas. And I'm gonna stick this onto the machine. And I basically, again, I'm gonna hang on to my threads until those get started. And then I am very slowly and very carefully sewing around the hem of the sleeve. This can be a little fiddly with this long sleeve just because you're sewing in a circle here, tight little circle. And then just like with the hem on the top, we're gonna trim those threads. And there we go. We've got the hem of the sleeve. So let's do that on the second sleeve and then I'll meet you back at the pressing station. And there you go. We have our finished Wexford with our twin needles on the hem of the sleeves as well as the hem of the body here. Everything is all, you can wear them now, whether you're making a top or a dress or making it sleeveless or sleeved. As always, if you have any questions, please leave them down below. I'm happy to answer those as soon as possible. And until next time, happy sewing. So there we have it, our completed Wexfords. As promised, this is a beginner-friendly pattern. It's a really pretty quick make, all things considered, and extremely comfortable to wear. This is my third and fourth time to make this pattern, and it's been a delight each and every time. As a reminder, you can get your hands on the Wexford by becoming an all-access member of the Cashmerette Club, the all-access tier of the Cashmerette Club. It is included in that entire pattern library. Well worth the money, in my opinion, to be an all-access tier member, if for nothing else, just the plethora of patterns that are out there that are yours to grab when you join that club tier. Again, there's so many other things that are there with that club as well. As always, if you have got any questions or run into any problems as you are making your own Wexford, please leave those down in the comments below. I'm more than happy to answer those. Until next time, happy sewing!